everyone, it's Jessica. Thanks for joining me today. So today I'm going to be making a layout for these two pictures here of my cats, Atticus and Petunia, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what's going on in them later. But I did print them at home, and the photo paper that I am using is not the greatest, and so it's making my ink smear, so I'm going to have to reprint those later. But I have also gone ahead and pulled together a whole bunch of fun pattern papers from a couple of my different Hip Kit Club subscriptions. Mostly I am working with the April kit, but I have pulled in some papers from some other months as well, and I'll probably use the back side of a couple of them, but I just really loved how fun and colorful these particular papers were, especially since my pictures are so neutral. I'm going to go ahead and map my photo on this coral piece of cardstock, and I think that's going to play really well with some of these papers here. So I do have them cut down as squares right now, but I am going to turn them into triangles. So I am using this sketch by Allison Davis as my inspiration for today, and it's a lot of fun because you can find this sketch and others on the Hip Kit Club website, and you can see that same picture there for free. But if you are a subscriber to the Hip Kit Clubs, then you can also download those sketches, including some directions. So I have measurements and all sorts of different directions and things like that to help me put my layout together today. So when I am cutting some triangles in papers, what I like to do is just use the guide on my cutter to go from corner to corner. And then if you notice, I brought my blade into the center of the paper before I dropped it down to start cutting. And that's just because I don't like to run the blade at the very corner of the paper because I find that it kind of scrunches it up a little bit. I am also trying to think ahead to the direction that I want some of these papers to be going and the way that the triangles are going to face. So my intention was to have this particular pattern paper with the lines running horizontally, although by the time I'm all done putting it together, I'm going to actually turn them vertically. And here's about where I kind of realized that, you know what, maybe I should have taken those different squares and kind of placed them down first just to make sure that I do know which patterns I want to go in what order, so that as I am cutting these, at different kinds of angles, that I make sure that I cut in the correct direction. So that's how those stripes end up getting moved a little bit, but here's where I'm just trying to do a little bit of that pre-planning before I cut into my papers. But I've got them all cut, and I've got my white cardstock trimmed down just a little bit so that I can mat it on that coral cardstock. Now, normally I would probably gut that base piece of cardstock, that coral color, just to save a little bit of paper, but I am going to end up doing a little bit of stitching later, and I thought it just might be easier to have a solid piece back there, but I do like to save paper otherwise. So here is the direction that I ended up going in with my different patterns, and I thought that this was a nice little spread, kind of moving some of those whiter patterns around and more solid colors around. And then what's fun is that sketch has that open triangle off to the left side that you fill with a whole bunch of flowers or other kinds of embellishments. So I'm going to end up doing those ones later. Now, before I glue these down, I thought it would be fun just to take my edge distressing tool and just do a really quick little run through across all three edges. So I don't do any major distressing, but just enough to kind of give a little bit of visual interest here to these papers. So I'll go ahead and finish those off camera, and then we can move on to the next part. Now I have glued them down, and what I want to do is add a little bit of stitching. So if you look on the sketch, it does show some stitching that you could do like with a machine or by hand, or even some faux stitching, or just leave that part off. I do love to do hand stitching, so I'm going to go ahead and add that hand stitching into mine, and I'm going to go around the perimeter of each of the triangles just along the inside. So to make it a little easier, what I did is I just took a ruler and a pencil, and I made myself a guide, and then I'm going to freehand poking my stitching holes in here. Sometimes I do it this way where I just kind of freehand along a pencil line. Sometimes I will pull out one of my little stitching guide rulers and use those to poke some holes. I just have to say though, I'll show them to you here in just a second. I have two different ones, that the two that I have are no longer available. I get so many questions from people saying, hey, where'd you get that ruler? Or, tell me about your stitching guide. Can I get one? And I have had these for a while. They're both from Close to My Heart, which unfortunately has gone out of business. So I don't know if there is another company out there that makes a similar product, but if not, somebody needs to, because they're awesome and everybody always wants to get their hands on them. So I'm sorry I don't have any links or anything to those stitching guides. Here I'm just kind of finishing up putting that hand stitching on. I did use 4 strands of white DMC embroidery floss to do just a regular back stitch all the way around. It did take me quite a while, but it was fine because just as I was done poking my holes, my son asked me to sit down and watch the Minecraft movie with him. And so I did some stitching and we watched Minecraft together. So that was a lot of fun. All right, so I am going to mat my photos with a little bit of dark gray cardstock here. And again, I'm just kind of not using those ones that I have printed right now because that ink is like smudged on there and it's not drying. And so I have noticed in the past that if I touch it, I end up getting ink smudged everywhere on my paper. So I'm just trying to kind of pull those pictures in from time to time as a little reference, but I'll end up reprinting those later once I get some different photo paper delivered. All right, so I've gone through mostly my April kit here and pulled out a bunch of different embellishments that I have just to see what I might want to use from the kit. I really like that favorite chipboard piece, and then I pulled in a couple of hearts. And then out of the die cuts, I found these cute little houses and this little scallop border. And there was also a really cute little die cut cat, which I assumed I would work onto the page, but spoiler alert, it doesn't end up fitting anywhere. But I'm just kind of making a pile for myself of things that I might want to work with. I also have these like felt clouds that came in my kit, and I have not used them yet, and I've been dying to use them. So I'm going to work those in as well. Now, as far as that left-hand side of the page where that open space is that you fill in with like die cuts and flowers and things like that, I'm going to stamp and cut my own. So I just went through my stamp collection and I found a bunch of flower stamps, and I was looking for ones that were more solid in nature. So these are the colors I'm going to stamp them in, and I will link those, or not link them, I will list them in the description box down below in case you have them as well. And this one, actually, this particular flower stamp set is the very first clear stamp set that I ever owned. I've had it forever. But again, I was looking for flowers that were a little bit more solid in nature because that one pattern paper that has the florals on it, most of the flowers in that pattern paper are also solid and filled in. So I was trying to kind of mimic that if I could with my stamping, creating my own embellishments here. So you can see I've done a whole bunch of stamping, and even though I have some coordinating die cuts or die sets for some of these, I'm just gonna go ahead and fussy cut all of them. I didn't really want to mess with kind of getting my die cutting machine out and all of that. So I just sat and watched some TV and did a bunch of fussy cutting, and now I have a bunch of flowers to work with. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and put my photo mats down just so I don't have them moving around on me, and I can go ahead and start building up that floral cluster off to the left. Because of the stitching that is on there, it does add a little bit of dimension and bulkiness. So I did pop up my photos on some thin 3D foam tape, and now I'm just going to start figuring out where all of these different flowers go. So I'm trying to spread around the colors, and I'm trying to put some on top and some layered underneath. I really like these bright pops of green for the leaves. I think those end up looking really pretty. For a couple of them, I do end up having to cut them because on the sketch it does show them kind of going flush with the edges of that top and bottom triangle, so they don't really overlap in that sense. So I was just trying to get some straight edges on there as I was, filling in this empty left-hand space. And then for some of these, I will glue them all down off camera once I get this figured out, because it was a little bit tedious and took some time. But for some of them, I will glue them down flat to the page, and then for other parts, I will put a little bit of foam tape and pop them up. So I just have a big variety going on with the flowers. Also, as I'm kind of figuring things out, I started layering some of the smaller flowers in the center of some of the bigger flowers, and I thought that that was a lot of fun too, just to kind of give, you know, a variety of colors going on there. All right, so now that I have everything glued down, what I'm doing is just coming in with a couple of different colored enamel dots, and I am putting a few of them in the centers of some of the flowers. So not all of them, but just some of them I thought needed a little something extra. So I used a couple of melon color enamel dots, and then I'm going to use some that are like a dark yellowish orange kind of, and then also a few that are white. So I've got that done. And then what I'm going to do next is go back to that pile of die cuts and chipboard pieces and things that I had pulled out of the actual kit that these papers came from. So I'm going to use that favorite as part of my title. And then I'm going to use those alpha stickers, the puffy stickers that came with my kit, to finish off the title. And it's going to say favorite cat nap spot, because these pictures are of Atticus and Petunia sleeping up at the top of my son's top bunk. He's got bunk beds, and they love to be on that top bunk, and they kind of get themselves up along the edge of the railing, and they'll take naps, or they'll just sit there and stick their heads out through the railings and stare at everything, you know, that's going on. You know, they're cats. They like to be up high so that they can watch things that are happening in the house. And so often we find them there if we are not sure where they are. And every time he goes to bed at night, it's kind of like, oh my gosh, it's just like covered in cat hair. Like they have taken over. It's kind of annoying, but they're so cute. They just love being up there and snuggling together. So favorite catnap spot is going to be the title. You can see I have layered some of those house die cuts. I think those are so cute up at the top of the photos. And then I'm going to use those to kind of set the little scene for my clouds that I am so excited to work in. And then I'm just kind of adding a few other things to layer here and there. I've got a little like puffy sticker there that says favorite place or something like that. And then I'll put a couple of these chipboard hearts scattered around as well. And then I put that little tag off to the right-hand side, and then I layered a puffy sticker over it that I think says wild and sassy, which definitely describes my cats. So here's where I'm going to finish off that title now that I have those other pieces glued down. And I do like to just put a little bit of liquid glue behind my foam letters just to make sure that they're going to stand the test of time and not fall off the page as the years go by. So I'll go ahead and finish doing that off camera. And now here it has been another day, and in the meantime, thank goodness for Amazon, I have had some more photo paper delivered. Like I said, that other photo paper that I've been using, it was like the economy kind, and I find that for whatever reason, like my printer just doesn't like it. It makes those ink streaks on it. So I'm back to using the premium photo paper here, and they print it out much nicer the second time. So now I can finally get those pictures on there and really start to see what this is going to look like. So as some final touches here, I have pulled in some stickles, and I've also pulled in my clear shimmer brush, and I'm just adding a little bit of sparkle to a couple of those flowers. And that's going to be just about it. So I hope you guys have enjoyed watching and that you have been inspired. I know I say this all the time in my videos. I am a pattern girl. I love to have patterns and sketches and things to look at for inspiration. And in my mind, Allison Davis is like the queen of that. She just makes the most amazing sketches. And I love that those are available for free on the Hip Kit Club website. So like I said, you don't have to be a subscriber. You can still get in there and see them. But if you are a subscriber, then you can download them, and they will include dimensions and instructions and just a few extras as well. So I love this sketch. I'm a big fan of triangles on layouts. So this one was really a lot of fun. And of course, those kitties are just too cute. All right, guys, thanks so much for being here with me today. I will see you next time. Happy crafting. Bye.